Hello again, my fellow do-it-yourself remodeler friends of the internet. Welcome back to another great video today. As you can see, I'm standing in the middle of this living room here in our latest condo flip project here. And today we are going to show you how to install laminate flooring. And by the way, laminate flooring is pretty much the same as regular wood flooring, so we're showing you essentially how to install wood flooring into your condo flip project.
You want this alright? Well, this alright. Too good to be true. You want this alright? Well, this alright. Too good to be true. Gonna make you feel good. Gonna make you feel good.
Alright, so this is the type of flooring that we're going to be installing today, and what's interesting about this is what we call glueless flooring. Some people also refer to this as a floating floor. And the way this works, they also call it click lock because the pieces usually click lock like this. They snap right down and together, and they're together, and that's how you install the floor all the way down the line. And this is different from the other two forms of wood installation. Other types of wood flooring installation would be called glue down, where you would glue these down, and that's a more permanent. And same with nailing. So with nail down, you would be using a nailer and going right through these tongues here. Okay, so in this video today, we're going to show you everything about installing this wood floor from start to finish, including how to determine if your floor even qualifies to have wood flooring put down on it. And everything on how to prepare the subfloor, how to use the right type of underlayment here, and more importantly, how to follow the directions of your manufacturer. Because if you don't follow the directions to the T, you will void your warranty. And so I'm going to give you tips during this whole installation process to keep you from voiding your warranty, because that's the last thing in the world you want to do, is void the warranty of your installation after all of that hard work you put in. All right, so you can see we've taken our delivery of wood flooring today, and let me just remind you, the day you receive the wood is not the day you install it. So that's the first mistake that a lot of people make. They think, oh, wood's here, let's go ahead and start installing it on the floor. But that's not what you're supposed to do. That's why I tell you over and over again to read the manufacturer's instructions, and they're all different. So you have to read it from start to finish. And in here, this particular manufacturer says you have to let this wood soak in the box, in this room where you're installing it, for 48 hours. Some manufacturers require 72 hours, and I've even seen some require a week. So you need to know how long that manufacturer wants you to have the wood sitting here. And the reason is they want it to acclimate to the exact temperature and humidity environment that it is going to be living in, so that it's all ready to go for you. If you were to just take this wood flooring and throw it down on the floor and start putting it together, you're likely to either see shrinkage or expansion too much later on, and squeaking. You want to avoid squeaky floors. This is one of the symptoms, one of the reasons of a squeaky floor. Okay, now before you decide to rush out and buy all that wood flooring or laminate flooring for your installation, you have three things that you have to do first, folks. Okay, number one, you have to determine if your room qualifies to have wood flooring or laminate flooring installed into this room. Number two, you have to determine what type of environment you have, because that determines what type of wood flooring and wood laminate that you can buy. You have to determine whether you're above grade or at grade or below grade. And thirdly, what you must do is you have to be able to prepare your subfloor to accept the wood flooring. Okay, so here's how we determine what's the best type of wood flooring to get for your particular environment here. So I've created this little PowerPoint slide here for you to show you the three common placements that you're going to see for wood flooring. So you could either have a basement floor, which is considered below grade, or you could be at the ground floor, which is considered at grade. See, there's your grass, there's your soil there. And then the third common case is like on an upper floor where you're above grade. Okay. Now sometimes you get lucky and you get wood that can handle all three grades. Okay, and you're probably wondering, well, why does this matter if I'm above grade, at grade, or below grade? Well, down in the basement is usually a unique situation because you have moisture coming up through the foundation slab. Cement is actually like a sponge, and it just takes in moisture from everywhere. So you have to have a wood flooring that can handle that kind of moisture, and of course you need to have you know, a moisture barrier put down as well. At the ground floor, you may or may not get some moisture, and of course on upper floors there's no problem at all. Okay, so we've chosen our wood plank here, or this is a laminate plank here. And let me just show you some of the criteria we look for. Number one, I choose the longest plank I can get. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, the longer plank you can get, the fewer lines you'll have going as you place them down the row here. So these are 52 inches long, and these are 6.5 inches wide. So I always tell people, get the longest, widest plank you can get. The wider planks look modern, and they'll make your room look bigger because you won't see, you know, going across the floor, all these tiny little 3-inch, you know, lines going across. So they'll install quicker, you'll have fewer lines, and it'll look nicer and cleaner. Okay, and then the next thing you want to look for is a thicker laminate. So as you look here down the profile of our laminate piece here, you can see on top there the dark, that's your laminate. So that's a 12 millimeter laminate there. Some of them are 8 millimeters, and I don't recommend them because they're thinner, they're not as high quality, and they're not as durable, and you won't get as long of a warranty either. And then below that, you can see this is the MDF layer. That's the medium density fiberboard. And then this one, if you look at the bottom of it, it's nice and shiny. That makes it a lot more resistant to water. It doesn't mean it's waterproof. It just means, hey, it might buy you more time if it gets wet. And then, of course, here you want to look for the simple drop block floating installations. You don't want to make the mistake and buy the wrong wood thinking you're doing a floating floor, and you get the wood here and open it up and find out it's a glue type or a nail down type. So you always want to check your flooring before you buy it, your laminate flooring and your wood flooring. And then I also look for here this durable AC4 rating. You can do an AC3 rating, so AC1 through 3 is basically residential. This one here is the first level of commercial rating, and so because it's AC4, it gives you this has a lifetime warranty if you're using it in residential only. But if you use it in a commercial environment, I believe they cut it down to only a few years. Okay, so this is our wood. So, for example, one of the criteria they have here on this one here, this manufacturer wants you to have a humidity level of between 35% and 65%. This is why it's a problem for people who live in Arizona that have a super dry desert climate, and they wonder why, hey, why did my floor just fail on me after I installed it? They don't realize, people apparently don't tell them out there, but the floor can dry up and shrink up, and your planks will become all loose on you after you install it. That's because you have to have a humidity level. In some places, they actually have to have humidifiers in the room. So anyway, let's test our humidity level here. All right, so here, what I have here is a digital thermometer that also tells you relative humidity. So if we come in and take a closer look at it, you can see right up here in big numbers right up at the top here, it tells us we're at 48% humidity, 49%. And so we're well within the range. Remember, the manufacturer says they want 35% to 65%, okay? Okay, so the next thing that the manufacturer requires is they want you to take a humidity meter and they want you to put it down on the floor and test the humidity. So that's what we have here. We've got this humidity meter. And this one you can see right here, you can set it to either wood or, in my case, what they call building, which means building material or cement. And what you do is you just set it down on the surface there, and it will tell you the percent. So let's go down here and set it down to the ground here, right onto the cement. And let's see what it reads. So right now it's telling us 5%, 6%, and that's generally below the level that they tell you that you need to be worried about. And we're going to pretend this piece of wood is our wood subfloor. And we're going to measure it here and see what this says in here. So it says 9.6%. Put it on hold there. So there we go. So we're at 9.4% now. And the manufacturer says that the moisture must be below 14%. So you know that in this room you would be okay if you had a wood subfloor. Okay. The other thing to qualify for the wood flooring here is, see this entire, we have a cement slab here. We're on the second floor of a condominium, so we're in the ideal position here because we are above grade on a cement slab on a building that's 40 years old, so it's more than cured. And it looks reasonably flat. But the way you're supposed to do this is, all right, so you can see here I've got the spirit level here. This is a 6-footer, and when you lay it down, it should be pretty flat. So this is good. This thing smacks down perfectly, like that, see? And so what they want is, the manufacturer of this particular laminate plank, they want no more than 3/16 of an inch difference like this between a 10-foot run of the floor. I'm a little more strict. It sort of follows the same rule. I like to go no more than 1/8 of an inch across 6 feet. So right now I'm doing good here. I could probably find an area where it's not. This is even pretty good. It'll wiggle a little bit there. If I go down to the other end, see that? So that's about the most you want to have. And if you find any areas where there's any big dips or hills on your cement slab, then you're going to have to get rid of those. Either by filling it in with a self-leveling compound. Now if you take a look at this video that I'm showing you here right now, this was a project in a condo flip that I did a couple of years ago where the builder did such a horrific job of the slab up there on the 3rd floor by the living room and by the sliding glass door that we had to pour down a whole bunch of self-leveling compound until we could get the floor nice and flat like you see here, so that we could then put the wood flooring down. So you can see there is a lot of work that you have to do ahead of time, and if you fail to do this right here that we're talking about, you stand a chance of voiding your warranty on the wood flooring. This would be a perfect time, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button down below. And once you hit that subscribe button, you'll see that little gray bell. Click on that, and that will alert you to every time we put a new video so that you'll never miss a video. And also, if you like our video here, you can click on the thumbs up button down below. That lets us know that you like us. And any questions you have, please enter them in the comments down below too. Okay, now if we zoom in here and take a close look at this right here, this is a chunk of cement, I guess, that the builder had left behind. So things like this thing's sticking up probably at least 1/8 of an inch off the floor. We have to chisel that off before we're done. And if you, likewise, if you see any large chunks of paint, you have to get rid of those. And you see all these little craters here along the perimeter of our wall, like we're here, and then down here, and down here. These are former nails from the carpet strips that were here. So we took up carpeting before we put down this flooring here, right? And the nail tack strips, those nails leave a lot of damage behind, and you want to make sure that's all cleaned up and that there's no rising chips sticking up off the floor. No nails, any leftover nails sticking up. So you can see there's a lot of work you have to do to your subfloor before it's ready to accept that wood flooring. You don't just pull it out of the box and throw it down on the floor. Okay, so now choosing your underlayment, and by the way, every single wood flooring you should put underlayment down. And in fact, it's required by code in many condos and multi-story dwellings. In fact, if you put down a flooring and you didn't put down an underlayment and your neighbor finds out about it downstairs and gets mad, turns you into the city, they can make you come in and tear the whole thing out again. So make sure you buy a good quality underlayment. And if you were doing tile flooring on an upper floor from somebody, you have to put down a 1/4 inch cork before you put down that tile. So those are just things to think about for your underlayments. And don't skimp on your underlayment. There's 3 grades. There's a premium grade. This is a good solid medium grade here. And then there's the real cheapy thin grade that almost looks like a white cellulose. That's super cheap. Don't buy that cheapy stuff. Don't try to save a few bucks there. That's not the place to save a few bucks. So this is what you want. This is reasonably thick. This is almost 1/8 of an inch thick. So you want nice thick rubbery. And the premium one, by the way, is made out of recycled tires, and that's the best one because it has the most sound suppression. So these, their purpose is to add good sound suppression, to give a little bit of stability there under the planks. And then you can see they have a moisture barrier built into one side of it here. So when you put these together, you want to overlap them. See, here's your liner here. You want to overlap this here. So this good high quality one has the waterproofing built into it, and that's what you're going to lay down. Okay, so before we roll this out, I wanted to mention to you the pricing. So this was about 60 cents a square foot. The premium stuff is about 70 cents a square foot, and the cheapy stuff can be 40 cents or below per square foot. And so you got to really plan accordingly. So in this whole project here, we're doing about 680 square feet. So we bought 700 square feet of this underlayment. That's 7 rolls. They come 100 square feet per roll. And sometimes you can buy the rolls that have 400 square feet on them. And they're a lot bigger and heavier to handle. These are just a lot more manageable to just pick up 7 rolls of this. Okay? Okay, so another question that comes up a lot is, hey, which direction am I supposed to mount this flooring? Should I go this way or do I go this way? Now typically, we usually like to go down the long side of the room, okay? So that's one way of doing it. And typically that coincides with the direction that the light is coming in. Most of the manufacturers prefer that you have this floor aimed facing the direction that the light is coming in, like this. So we're going to be mounting this flooring this way, here. So the length of this flooring is lined up with the way the light is coming in. And there's another reason why we want to do it here too. So if we look down here at this floor, okay, so let me show you another reason why we're doing it this way. So as you bring the flooring down here and you see we have to line this wood flooring up against this curved tile floor here all the way down. The problem is how do you line up to it? So we're going to be cutting each one individually to line up parallel with this, right? And it's a lot easier to chop saw the end of it to line up at an angle than it is to rip down. If I was to put boards like this, I mean, this one's not too bad, but just remember the boards are going to be like this though, see? So by the time you get up to the end, you're going to be left with a wedge piece. So we decided that's not the optimum way to do this. We want to be more like this. And it's easier to just cut this at a slight angle to make it, we'll leave like a space like that, and we'll use a T-molding that goes over here. We're going to be getting a flexible T-molding, and we'll do a separate video on that too, on how to do the flexible T-molding for you. But that's why we're choosing the orientation here. And then likewise here in this guest bedroom, you can see the window is there and the light's coming in this way, so that's why we're going to be putting the wood planks going this way, facing the window. Okay, and lastly, and this probably doesn't apply to too many of you, but they want to make sure that if you're putting wood flooring down onto cement slab here, that if this is a new construction house, you got to make sure the slab has been there probably 30 days. It has to be fully cured before you can go ahead and put any kind of flooring down, and that includes tile or basically anything. Because if it's not cured yet, that means the concrete is still moving, doing whatever it's doing, and it can crack on you. It can cause the floor to crack, and that would also void your warranty as well. Yeah, and by the way, the manufacturers want you to use a calcium chloride test, really, to test the amount of humidity on the concrete floor, but really this is reasonably close enough. Okay, so you roll out the underlayment here like this, and what they want you to do, see, this is your moisture barrier here. They want you to bring it up near the wall, and they want this to go up the wall about 2 inches or so. And the reason why they want that is this is what helps give you a nice moisture barrier to protect your floor. So if there's ever any kind of moisture coming down the wall, like inside the wall, or a leak or something, or a leak by the window that comes down the wall, at least it's not going to get past this barrier here and onto here where it would go up to your wood floor. And then as you look over this way here, you see this adhesive tape that's on here? So what we do is we start at the other end here, and we'll put the next piece of the green underlayment across the floor here. And it too will have one of these sticking out of the side, and that will tape right onto here. So you'll butt the two green pieces together here, and then it'll tape right over here. It'll stick. This is a sticky adhesive you're using here. So that's how we tape them together. You don't have to use a separate roll of tape with this like you do with the others. Okay, so now before you run out to buy all your laminate flooring or your wood flooring, there's three things you need to make sure of before you start, before you even think about buying it. Number one, the first thing you have to worry about is look at the environment of your room, and does your room qualify for having wood flooring or laminate flooring installed into that room? And we're going to show you momentarily how to check that out. All right, so here is another piece of laminate flooring right here. One of the things you'll notice out of here is it's basically just a film that's on the top. It's not even a veneer like you saw on the previous piece. It's not even 8 millimeters. This is just a film on the top of MDF. So this is about the cheapest form you can get. And I believe this was like $159 per square foot when we got that. That's on a project we did last year. And here's another one here. This is a little bit higher quality product that we had used a couple of years ago. Now this is bamboo veneer on the top, and that's a 14 millimeter coating there on the top there. So that layer, 14 millimeters thick, is a lot higher quality. And you have the MDF as well in the middle. And then on the bottom you have plywood. So this is probably one type of what they call engineered product. It's an engineered hardwood. Others that we've used in the past will have this plywood on the bottom, but it will crisscross each additional layer. And so by binding together several layers at 90 degrees apart, it makes it more resistant to expansion and shrinkage. Okay? And then this is a solid piece here. So this is a bamboo that I used before. This is part of a flooring from bamboo, a little slice that I cut off. And you can see this is solid. This was solid 1/2-inch bamboo all the way through. This is probably about the highest quality you can get for bamboo. Strand Natural. It has a Janka rating of about 2,500, which is twice as hard as American red oak, which is the toughest of the American woods. So anyway, yeah, with the bamboo here, solid piece all the way through, and very high quality. This was about $279 a square foot, compared to about $169 a square foot, compared to $159 a square foot. So there's your different types of wood. These are just a few. There's many more others, but of your laminate flooring, this is your basic type, and what to look for to be able to use it on each one of your floors here. There'll usually be a chart on the sign there next to the product at the store telling you which type of flooring that you can use these on, whether you have to use it on a ground floor or upper floor or what. But that's very important that you make sure you're buying the right wood for which floor you're putting it on. Okay, now before we start installing, I just wanted to point out that this is a 52 by 6.5 inch plank here. And the reason why we choose that length also is for strategy. It's like playing pool. You're always playing for position. And by choosing a 52-inch piece, most manufacturers tell you not to use a length of piece that's shorter than the width. So in this case, theoretically, you wouldn't want to use a length of wood longer than 6.5 inches here, right? But I think that's too short of a piece. And so does the manufacturer, because the manufacturer says not to use any piece of wood less than 10 inches long. So with this piece here, this allows me to use 5 different lengths of wood, which means that as I come across the floor and I start there, that gives me 5 rows that I can have of different length before I have to repeat the pattern again. So if you just buy the short little 36-inch pieces that would end like right here, you're only allowed to use 3 different cut sizes, which stinks, because that means you're starting your pattern every 3 rows. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay? And so you'll have a very planned looking stair step pattern going across your floor, and that's not good. So my rule of thumb is I try to go 5 rows before having to repeat a pattern so it won't be as noticeable. And even then, sometimes I'll cut a random length in the middle here, and yes, I'll have a butt cut. You can have a butt cut every, few rows if you want one. And that will allow you to create it even more random. Look, the whole strategy, when you come into a floor and you look, you should look across a floor and not be able to really notice any type of pattern. It should look very random. And so if you take a look at this drawing here that I have for you, that I've made here, and this shows you what I'm talking about. Here's the 3-step pattern here that repeats every 3 rows, and then followed by that is this one here. You can see is the 5-step pattern, and so this is a lot better. And then we improve upon the 5-step pattern by every now and then making one change to one of the pieces, make it more of a random in-between size, so that now we'll change things up. And you might use a few more pieces. So what? You can use all these pieces in a closet when you're done. And then lastly, you want to avoid the H pattern. I see too many foolish installers, professional installers even. I've seen professional installers do this with tile. The H pattern is horrible, people. Don't do this. Do not be that guy. But yet, so many people do this pattern, and you need to avoid this pattern like the plague. It's just bleh. Unless you really are a glutton for punishment and you have some kind of fetish and you really like this pattern. But I would say avoid the H pattern at all costs, and avoid the repetitive step pattern, stair step pattern, whenever you can. All right, so I always like to start off by characterizing my wall where I'm going to begin, and I shoot a laser down, and I just want to see how straight the wall is to my laser line. Does it bend in and out? And you can see, like right over there, you can barely see the laser line, but let's see. Yeah, you can see it right there on the ground there. And it looks pretty straight, but you can see some bowing. The wall bows out a little bit in the middle down there. And then you can see down at the other end there, the laser is up against the wall. See? So you can see it kind of bows in and out a little bit. What I also like to look for is the drywall being a little bit gapped up off the floor like that. The reason why we like these gaps is we can put our wood plank right up to it. You just can put it right up to the edge here, and that way it will expand underneath it too. You don't want to stick it way under because you want to keep the nice width that you have of your plank here, see. But at least if you put it right there, now your baseboard has a decent place to rest. Because remember, they want you to keep the edge of your plank, in this particular case, 5/16 of an inch from the perimeter, or what they call the wall. So in this case, the drywall is not our wall. The wall is underneath. It's in the back there, see? Underneath the drywall. So you want to give it room to expand. So I just back it up a little bit so that my plank is now right under the drywall. And that's why it's so important, why we tell you to always buy a nice, fancy, tall, and thick baseboard. Get the thickest you can get. It's usually about a 1/2 inch. And the reason why you want a 1/2 inch is because if you have a 5/16 inch gap here that the manufacturer wants you to have, and then you put your baseboard on, at least you know it'll rest on top of it there. Some people make the mistake of doing this. They think, oh, I have to leave a 1/2 inch around the edge of the floor, all the way around with my plank. So then when it comes time to put your baseboard, guess what happens? The baseboard can fall behind your wood, and that's not what you want. You need to try to strike a happy balance where your wood is close enough to your drywall so that you can put your baseboard right on top of it, see, like that. That's why in our case we're pretty lucky, because now we can move the wood right there, and when we put our baseboard on, we will have no problem. Now the other wall, we may have an issue where the problem here is that we have to, well, our planks are going to go this way, but you want to make sure you're within You know, that's 5/16 right there. Okay, so we can't put the wood underneath the drywall. The drywall comes all the way down to the ground here. So there's our spacing, and then the baseboard will go here. All right, so let's start laying our planks now. So as you can see, we have cement floor here, and we're on the second floor, as you can tell by looking outside there. So we have the best case scenario here. We have a concrete floor that's reasonably flat, and we're above grade, so we don't have to worry about anything with moisture or any of that other kind of stuff there. Nothing to worry about being at grade. Now, of course, we're dealing with a cement floor, but if you had a wood floor, a wood subfloor under this, you would have to make sure first that all your wood sheets are rock solid, that there's no squeaking. You want to jump up and down all over the place on them and start screwing and maybe gluing some of them back in. But you want to do some good work on your subfloor to make sure there's not too much play. And guess what? I've seen some really bad deals where they got the trusses too far apart, you know, going down on the wood floor, and then you would have to stiffen things up so that you wouldn't have too much flexion. But we're dealing with concrete here today. All right, so now to put the second row of the underlayment down, you want to stretch out the overlapping liner here, and then this is what they want you to do, is to pull out this tape. So this is an adhesive tape. So we're going to pull this down the whole way down here, and then stretch out the liner over the tape. I'll show you like this, and you just do this the whole way down the row there. Okay, so now that all of the underlayment is in place, we are ready to start laying our first planks. And I just wanted to point out to you, I highly suggest you take your wood planks from different boxes and mix them together. Okay, and the reason for that is all of the planks in one box might sort of be along the same color line, and when you put it together on the floor, it could end up looking like a blotch of color that's the same shade. And so it'll look not quite random. So the best way to overcome that is you grab one from this box, one from this box, one from that box, one from that box, and so on. We usually call from different boxes all over the place. And that makes it a lot more random. And that's what you're looking for. Everything you're doing, you want it to look random. You don't want it to look planned or you know, in the case of the lines, your lines between the boards, and your stair-step pattern, you want to avoid that, and you want to avoid blotches of the same color going down the line. So let's get started. Okay, so before we cut our first piece, I wanted to just show you on our chop saw here, the blade I use here is a T90, and that gives you about the finest cut you can get on wood flooring. And so a lot of people always wonder, what is the best size blade to use? You know, how many teeth should I have on my blade if I want to make a good cut, a nice clean cut onto my laminate flooring or my wood flooring? And so some people will say, well, T60 is good enough. You know, some of the manufacturers of the wood plank will tell you that. Some people will say T80, but I like my T90 because it just gives you a perfectly ultra thin kerf, nice, perfect cut. It's like butter. And then we're going to be cutting along this line here. So we always mark the line on the top of the wood. And then you always want to cut from the top of the wood down through. And that prevents, you know, sharding and getting sharp edges and stuff like that. And another thing to remember is I always hook a shop vac up to my chop saw here so that when I make the cut, the dust gets sucked into the vacuum. You must do this, otherwise you're going to have dust from your, you know, sawdust all over the place, and it will get sucked into your air conditioner filter as well, and it will clog up your filter within a day. And also it'll clog up your nose and your lungs, and so you also want to wear a mask when you're making cuts here too. So here's my vacuum, and I'm going to turn it on and make the cut. See how that T90 blade just gives you an absolutely perfect cut. And when you feel along the edge, it's just nice and smooth. And look at that nice sharp line there. See? And be sure to dust off your board after you make the cut, or you are going to be tracking dust all over the house. Okay, so we have our first two pieces that we're just kind of putting into place here. And we always use a installation kit. This is a flooring installation kit. And it comes with things like this black bracket here, which we'll show you in a while, that helps you tap boards back into place. And it also comes with a little tapping block here. And we all have also got ourselves a much larger tapping block, which we'll show you later why we have that. And you also want to have a nice mallet, and always get a white one, not a black one. And in fact, they even make other mallets that are specifically made for flooring that have a soft, more of a gelatin type rubber that you can use as well. We prefer this one. And I have a bar of wax here, so sometimes we will rub wax down the length of our boards before we snap the new board in. That just makes them glide in easier and snap down easier, and helps prevent creaking and cracking up the boards. And remember, you always have to know what you're doing here. So as we look at the end of the board here, we know that we're going to be mating up against this tile, and that we're going to have a T-molding there. Now it's going to be a flexible T-mold that we have. That's on order. That'll be here in a couple of days. But I have a piece of just regular wood T-mold to show you here how it works. So the T-mold will go on, and it has to push all the way against the tile to the left here, so that you can see how it's all the way against the tile like that. And then you have to leave an expansion underneath it between the end of the wood piece and the center of it, where it's a T. So you see how, so the board that you put down can't come all the way up against that center T there. It has to have a gap in there. And that's how you set that gap and that distance and everything, so that the T-mold is covering the board. It'll still be over the board, but there's room for the board to expand under it, that 5/16 of an inch that you need. That's why planning these in your cut on the end is so crucial. This first row is always going to take you probably a half hour to get just that part done by the time you align everything up. And once you get your first 2 or 3 rows down, don't worry about exactly where they're positioned against the wall and whether they're all locked in and this and that yet, because everything's going to shift around on you until you start getting more courses down the row here. So typically what we do is we get our first 3 rows in, then we try to snap them all in, make sure they're all nice and tight and up against the wall where we want them, and then we'll take a case of wood planks here, and we'll put that wood flooring right on top of our 3 rows, and that'll hold them steady until we get all the other ones in. So once you get about 5-6 rows down, you don't have a problem anymore, because then there's enough weight down on the floor to keep everything from sliding around. Okay, and remember, when these click lock into each other, they're going to be perfectly aligned all the way straight down the line. So the boards will determine the line, not necessarily the wall. So if the wall bows in and out, you still have the straightness of your board to tell you, am I straight or not? So that's why you want to make sure they're all perfectly clicked in together here before you start trying to mash it up against the wall with all these little black spacers here. See, so these are the spacers here. And what we do with the spacers, they just provide that 5/16 inch that we need between the wall and the board. This particular manufacturer wants us to put the tongue in first and leave the tail out, because the next row will come in and it'll click lock into this. We'll put it in and snap it down. Alright, so with the first 2 boards, now it's time to do this end piece here. And you go, well, how do you do that? Well, you don't measure, you always eyeball everything according to the piece of wood being in place. So here's how we're going to do this. We know we need a piece that has to go from this edge of the board right here, the edge of the laminate part, not the edge of the board part, but the edge of the laminate, which is right here, has to go from here to 5/16 inch away from the wall. So how do we do that? What you do is you take your board and you flip it. You don't spin it, you just flip it end over end like this. So now that it's upside down, right? And now that it's upside down, you find where the wall is here, and you come back 5/16 inches from the edge of the wall. But of course, in our case, we can go under the wall right here, right? So all we have to do now is mark on here where it lines up to there. In that case, it is about right there. You see that? So that's where we're making our mark. And then you just translate that over to the top side of the board. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, so I flipped the board around, and there's my mark. So there's the full length of the piece that I'm going to make here. I'm going to take this over to the chop saw and make my cut. And the remaining piece here, this will begin the second row. This will be the first piece of the second row. Okay, so we have that last piece in there. 10 inches, as it worked out exactly. And so now we're coming back over here to put that remainder of that large piece that we cut that from is going to go over here. And again, we have to kind of work out here how to cut this piece at an angle here, just like we did the first piece, so that it will fit under that T-mold there. So this is a good learning experience for you, because you're probably not going to be running up against this situation. You're probably going to have a nice straight wall where you won't have to cut the beginning of the piece first. Okay, so there's your first two pieces in there. So now the next piece here is going to be a whole piece, and he's going to straddle the seam here between these two pieces here. And so what we're going to do is you have to put the plank here, and you've got to stick it into the tail. So I have it just resting there just to show you how it's going to go down here. So I usually use my knee on the first row here to hold that down while I push down on this one. You just got to give it a little push down. And again, like I said, until we give it a couple of taps and get a few rows going in here, it's not always going to immediately snap right down. The tolerances on these are not always perfect either, but you do want to make sure that you don't run into like this. See? So I created this little situation to show you here of what happens when the two pieces in the first row are not perfectly lined up. These two have to be lined up so that there's no lippage there. So we'll pull this back out, and I'll show you. So that's why the alignment is very critical. You can barely see it right there. There's about 1/16 of an inch of lippage. So we're going to adjust these, see? So that's why, without having the benefit of the weight of all of these other rows behind you, these first three rows take the longest. And we're going to put some more spacers back here too to help out as well. Alright, so here I've got the spacers right there. And I like to put them right across the seam so that it supports both of them at the same time. And it keeps them nice and even here, so when you go to put your plank to cover across here, right across that seam, you'll be just fine. And now you remember I showed you earlier this longer tapping block. This is why I use the longer ones, because it allows me to put it right up against the side of the wood here, your plank, and then you just give it a couple of love taps and everything will tighten in for you. Notice how I don't put it up against the tail, because the tail is likely to shatter, but you're supposed to give it gentle taps anyway. What I do is I come right up in here and I put it up against the edge of the veneered part so that I'm not hitting that MDF tail that is sticking out there. Okay, so we gave it a few taps, and now you can see the piece is laying down flat like it should be. Okay, and you see why it was important that we did that no smaller than a 10-inch piece at the end, because as it comes down over here to be the next piece of the next row, you can see how it gave us a nice distance here between these two cuts, and that's what you want to see. You never want to see your distance be less than the width of the plank. Always remember that as you're going across the floor.